Festival Booster 2024 is releasing in Japan as we speak, and we've already done a lot of videos talking about the various reveals over the weeks that a lot of you have been watching, which I'm very thankful for, but I decided that I should still keep up tradition and do a first impressions video, kind of just like summarizing all my thoughts before the set releases. There's already, unlike usual sets, this set has technically already been out for 2 weeks, but not exactly. The cards have been out for 2 weeks because of the pre-sale at the Vanguard 2 weeks ago, but a lot of people could only buy like 4 boxes or even just 1 box or none at all. And so a lot of people either bought stuff from their, from local shops, or they didn't buy anything at all because they were waiting for the official release and to be able to get the cards at a better price. And they're already quite cheap, actually. If you take a look at, websites like Card Rush, I was actually showing chat this a bit earlier, but the prices for these cards are actually pretty kind. Like, we expected the Dual Nation ones to be insane, but you see here 172 copies of the cabbage, and it's like $11 basically. So a lot of the Dual Nations are at a similar like $10, $11 price point. The poor Dark Stays Brandgate one is like $5. So they're actually pretty okay in terms of price. But we're not here to talk about prices, we are here to talk about the actual cards. And so I wanted to break down my thoughts on the set as a whole. So the 2 new OTs, I've done a whole video already talking about these, and there's a lot of interesting discourse about it, but I think in between the 2 of them, the purple one, I was already saying in my initial video, the purple one already felt better. I'm not sure if chat agrees or not, but I do think that in the end, the purple is the better one of the 2. This one feels like you can chuck it into anything. This one needs a bit of synergy, but at the end of the day, healing something out of damage means into hand, you also get, you're also getting something back that you damaged, that you wanted in hand, right? Whether that's a persona, whether it's a PG, whether it's a key card. So I like it for that. The Regulus piece also, initially people were like, oh, why would I use this over like, my ladder or over, the Gradale. But at the end of the day, having the CC1 is actually pretty huge, because sometimes your counterplay against a certain deck is just to like swing rears pass, right? To not give them any CB. And they go like, haha, got your nose, here's my 1-of that lets me countercharge 1, and suddenly they have their whole turn, right? And that's a card that is gonna be really big. And it's also Pot of Greed, right? So I've had games where it's like I'm playing Varga and I'm at 5 damage, I have 4 face-up CB, so I can use Varga and my Divine Skill and my Shenri, but I still have 1 more CB I can use. What if I use this to draw 2 and draw into another Shenri, right? And it's like, that can win me the game, right? So the draw 2, the Pot of Greed effect, what does it do? It wins me the game. It's actually a good Regulus piece. So overall, it's actually pretty nice. The Sanctitude is like, it's Sanctitude, but for grade 4 decks basically. And it's also like, just nice to have more copies of Sanctitude, right? If you didn't get the original one, now it's in a pack, right? It's also pretty kind in that sense. I could also split this into segments of nations, but I'm not gonna do that because of the Dual Nation cards. So I'm gonna split it into segments of new cards instead. So the grade 1s, they all have relatively good effects, especially the Keter one is really good because it looks at top card and is a 10k attacker. They're all 10k or 13ks, basically. Interestingly enough, all of them gain 2k except for the Dragon Empire one that gains 5k for some reason. I wonder why there's a discrepancy there. Something about Dragon Empire main characters and whatnot, but I digress. But them having the secondary effects of like, when you ditch something, banish shit, Energy Blast 3 to get a card back, the card you ditch back to hand is like, okay, whenever a Stride deck set comes out for this nation, it's gonna be great. Oh, would you look at that, Night Rose got announced. Well, I guess I know what card I should pick up now. So that's already pretty cool. Like the Keter one in particular is really good because of like the top deck look thing. But then you have, the Dual Nation cards that I think like the grade 1s are nice. Like they're a bit more niche, like some decks will want them, some decks won't. It's like, kind of comes down to what your deck wants to do. But the Dual Nation ones are interesting because the moment they got revealed, a lot of us were thinking, okay, well, where does this go into? What is this going to be used with? Turns out this guy in particular, the Fold and Rivalitas, is like the most used one, right? He's a 15k, he soul charges, he can either call something from soul or retire something. He's usually going to be calling something from soul. So a lot of the time you see this in Shiranui, you've been seeing him played in, I saw him played in Vermilion, seen him played in, trying to think what else I've seen him played in. Jet plays this as well. So, Jet buff, Bet Juff. This is definitely the card that is being seen played the most, I think, out of the Dual Nation ones, which is pretty cool. And like, yeah, he can get Shenri out, right? he's actually a very simple and a very good card. This one's like the most disrespected one because it just builds soul and gets back a set order or a card from your soul back to your hand. So it's like, I think it's still pretty good. It works in Vanguard, which is pretty nice. I think for that reason alone, it's pretty good. But then, like, even though this one's like disrespected a little bit right now, it can easily get really good in the future. So again, even though it's cheap right now, it's good to pick up for the future. I think in general, if you can afford it, if you play any of the nations that these share a nation with, pick them up. Like, especially my top ranking for these is Ford and Reveltis, this one, and this one I really have high hopes for, but it's like she has really good, or they have really good strategy or synergy with Eva, but there's no space in Eva for her. That's the problem. So, you know, being able to like return stuff back to deck so you don't deck out, and being able to like top 5 call something, it's like, it's also pretty nice. But this one is really good in even like Zorga, for example, where you get to potentially mill a card, but more importantly, you get order back to hand, and you can also call grade 2 or greater from drop as well. So in Zorga, this can get you back your Shadow Cloaks if you need to get multiple Shadow Cloaks on board, for example. So, or if you need like, you want to revive something that you want to bounce with Shadow Cloak or things like that, right? So for that reason, I think it's pretty good. And the reason why I think this card is not worth playing in Eva right now is mostly like, you need power, so you need Combine Rusher. You like, she doesn't gain power, she feels kind of awkward, she's not a kaiju, so she can't be targeted. You don't want to be cutting out your better cards. You know, Warpath in chat is saying cut a Wavy Loss. I'm not even playing Wavy Loss. Like, that's the thing, there isn't really the kind of space for her. I feel like the whole build would have to change to accommodate for her, which is a little bit weird as well. But yeah, Shadow Cloak can also bounce her back to hand and reuse her too, so just a really, really good card, I think, for any Stoichea deck and any Keter deck. Surprisingly, I didn't rate her as high initially, so another good pickup. But for me, by far my favorite Dual Nation card is good old freaking Cabbage, dude. The Chinese Cabbage, Lechuga, my favorite. I love Lechuga. This card to me is, there's just something so cool about the fact that it buffs anything placed by an effect by 5k. I was like, new Shoujo Doji is cool, but we're missing a bit of power. Oh, I know, Lechuga. You know, I'm just like, oh man, it'd be cool if I could use more ways to rush in Varga to beat these like stall Rezael players. Oh, I know, Lechuga. So it's just every time Lechuga is the answer. And it's like, if you play a restanding deck, you give plus 10k to your Vanguard for the turn, right? It makes a plant token. It's like, it does so much, in my opinion, that as long as you have some spare CB, you know, you have some CB to spare. It's like, it's good. Lechuga is the answer. So I'm honestly a pretty big fan of this one in particular, but I think my top 3, if I have to name them, it is these 3. These 3 are the 3 dual nations that I think are by far the best. But yeah, eat your veggies, they're great. And then we come down to the order pair. So each nation got a pair of a grade 2 and an order that they search out and set. So the nations that got the better one are Brand, Keter, and Stoichea, and the ones that got the worst one are Dark States, Dragon Empire, and Lyrical. So the better one is the one that, in particular, the best one is Keter, because of Rezael and Luard, where you call this, you soul blast 1, and you set this immediately. It doesn't even go to hand. It is immediately set for you. And then, when it's your opponent's turn and they attack, you can choose a rear that's not being attacked and guard with it, and then you bind it. If you choose her, for example, she gets 5k shield on top of that. But the best part is that in Keter, you have this cool card called Liela Morta that now every Keter deck that wants to use this order is playing, because she lets you reuse the cards in your bind zone, put them back to the deck. So Liel in Rezael is just infinite triggers. It never ends. You just call your triggers from your, like, it's literally fine to be on 2 damage as Rezael now, because you just go like, well, I'm going to call my Cadwall, I'm going to call my 15k trigger, let me guard with this trigger. Oh yeah, let me use Liela Morta next turn to put 2 triggers back to deck. Oh, let me use Divine Skill to put more triggers back to deck. It just doesn't end. It's crazy. Like, that deck can PG like 7 times plus a game. It's pretty ridiculous because you're just constantly recycling your cards. For that reason alone, I think this order pair is really good. Then Stoichea got the order pair too. I lost to this in top 8 of WGP Tokyo, over 1,700 players, and one of the top players in 4th, I think they ended, used this in Leonorn, and so they were basically just respawning stuff with Dianza, and there's the new generic in the next set that also lets you respawn grade 1 or lower too, so you can respawn your, you know, your PGs and then guard with them too. So it doesn't have the same kind of like synergy as Liel does in this. You know, people are using Liel in Luard even though she can't PG in Luard, but it's really big for that. And then Brand got this order pair too. Now Brand nobody's cooked anything crazy yet, but I have high hopes. I have high hopes in our lemon duo right here. I think these two lemon minions, you know, I have high hopes that we will find some deck that can use this. I think Eva could be an option, you know, if we're still in like the habitable zone era where we played this with like, you know, habitable zone dock, and then you put Great to Obfuscate to back row, and then you use this to, you know, like guard with your Great to Obfuscate. But I wouldn't be happy with that going to bind, so it feels like it's a bit unfortunate. But yeah, true, Utman did cook with Messiah with this deck, so maybe Messiah is an option. But the only issue with Messiah in this meta is that your opponent's locked rearguards get bound, which means they can use Leila Morta to put them back to their deck. So you lock their stuff, but then the Yell will put the things that are in the bind zone back. So it's actually a very bad matchup. So I don't know. I expect there to be cooking done with this one too. But this pair is the one for the other three nations is, again, you call this Soul Blast 1, you set this immediately, and then the order says at the start of battle phase, you choose a back row rearguard and give it boost. So it's a more aggressive one. The other three are the more defensive ones. These are the three more aggressive ones. This one says when it's chosen by the order, it gets plus 5k. So it's going to be a 15k boost, right? So people are playing this in Jet, right? I saw it being played in Jet, you know, Jet buff, Bet Juff, and you're able to create some pretty aggressive lines because this works on turn 2. So you can actually rush your opponent down pretty quickly. So there is hope. Like the fact this sets for you is actually pretty good. So 23k booster Bali, like damn, Bali more like ballin', dude. So Dragon Empire is the same one. So I've seen this one used in Jet, so at least there's a play for it. Not sure what would be using this in Dragon Empire yet, but there's also, of course, Lyrical. I love the art of the Lyrical one, but again, not sure what is going to be using it in Lyrical too. I'm not the most well-versed Lyrical guy. Shirnui Can, Eugene. All right, the moment someone says Eugene, that's when I know we're getting desperate. But I think these double rares I didn't review on in a video yet. They're actually way better than I thought. Initially I was like, oh, what is this? What is this random little double rare? Turns out it might shape the next format. These cards might be the reason why we get 30-minute rounds instead of 25-minute rounds in Vanguard in Japan. And it used to be 30 minutes in the past too, by the way. It was just V that made it 25, so blame V for everything. But anyway, that's basically all of the new cards in the set. Everything else is just reprints, right? So they reprinted all the quick starter deck triggers, which is nice. Like there's a lot of high rarity cards for the new cards. The reprints overall are quite good. So if we had to rank them for each nation, Dragon Empire is cooking because you got the two most important cards for Shoujo Doji. You got the Vermilion reprint as well. For Dark State, it's very good just because Falkrash is reprinted alone. For Brancate, like very big hit with Security Upgrader. Archite 1, new Archite might be used, but Soul Blast 2 is probably a bit too expensive for that deck. And then Hero, of course, good reprint too. And then of course the Doggo. Doggo is always a good reprint. For Keter, it was just kind of like fine, I guess. Like this is cool, I suppose. Stoichia was also a little bit lacking. Keter, I think, is pretty good reprint wise. Oh, sorry, not Keter, Lyrical. And then the RE pluses were like the special reprints. So I think Shenri's a very good one. In English, maybe not so much, but in Japan, she's very expensive. Freiheit, very good one. This dropped to like $5 now in Japan, so Welstra is like a very, very cheap meta deck. It's actually like, this is the only expensive card. Now that deck is pennies, right? Muna's a very good one too. She's very important in Prison. I think also like Sapient Owl was a bit pricey in Japan too, so it's good this was also reprinted. RPD, again, Zorga's meta right now, so now every part of Zorga is cheap. So it's like actually a lot of the meta decks in Japanese Vanguard right now are like getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, so it's very good. Even the like expensive parts of Raziel are being cut, which is pretty nice. This is also good for, you know, for Leonor, so overall good reprints. And Yuika is now like $10, so it just continues to be cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And they added in some high rarity chase cards that there's still reason to open these boxes in case you didn't have enough reason, right? You get dual nation cards, they're pretty friggin' valuable, but apparently you get 2 of these 7 in a carton, so that's pretty good. If you hit Hikari and Nao, then half your carton price is coming back for sure. So other than that, there's also Mikoto and Suo that are pretty good too. So yeah, Yuka reprinted to the ground. At least she's cheap now, so that's good. But yeah, Yuka definitely actually went down for the first time. She really went down in price a lot in Japan, so that's pretty good. So overall, this festival booster is like none other so far, where it's actually like incredibly meta impactful and very interesting, right? Last year's festival booster had some interesting cards, but it was mostly a lyrical set, right? This time they just need a new lyrical set on top. They didn't want to bloat it into this set, and instead they gave us interesting tools to work with for every single nation, every single deck. You get cool new dual nations, cool new grid ones, really interesting new OTs and Regulus piece. So overall, I'm very happy with this festival booster. I think it's by far the best festival booster we have ever gotten. So I hope they keep this up and do something like this next year too. I think if next year's festival booster is like this, where it's like in the pre-sale I only have to worry about picking up a couple cards, it feels pretty nice. So definitely recommend doing pre-orders for this set. I pre-ordered a carton pretty early just because I was like, these cards, like, I don't want to deal with the card prices once this set has been out for 6 months, because I think early on, right now, everything is pretty cheap. Give it 6 months, it's going to be a different story. So that's definitely something to think about. But that is my thoughts on Festival Booster 2024. I think it's overall a very good set, so 100% recommend picking it up. And of course, you know, try to cook with the new cards. Set 3 is actually just 3 weeks away, so we're definitely in the late game for the reveals of that set. And while the initial wave of like the few commons that they revealed, they weren't necessarily like too super exciting and hot, but now a lot of the commons and rares are showing the last few days are like, ooh, we're getting like new defensive tools, like random 23k attacker that draws you a card, like just random cool stuff here and there. So definitely a pretty good time like to be a Vanguard player right now. I've been saying this all the last few months, but right now card design in Vanguard is very interesting, and it seems to be continuing that way for quite a while. So with that, that's gonna be it for me today. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And if you want some bonus content, you want some first-person POV fights that are teaching you how to play all kinds of new decks coming out from these sets, become my channel member today and get access to those too. But with that, that's gonna be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.